Okay, it's time to do another inspection on the hive and our shaky walk out to them. I can't spend as much time with my hives today as I'd like because I have another appointment, but it keeps getting more and more overgrown and green back here, which is great. Strangely enough, last week there was a tornado that came through and messed up most of the area, but my bees made it just fine, which is good because I don't want to cry over all my dead bees if they were hurt. And here's how they all look with all the different bucks. And here's what it looks like in the front of the hives with bees just coming and going. So let's get started. In my first hive here, this is what it looks like in the brood chamber. I just wanted to show you kind of like how full it is, where the bees are. I'm actually missing a frame here, but that's fine. On this last side, you can see there's really not much. You can see all the way down there. So it's time to do the inspection. And in general, all I have time to do is check each hive to make sure they have a laying queen and just see if there's anything really, really wrong with it. So this actually goes pretty quick. I only have to check enough to confirm that there's evidence of a healthy queen, which means I see all stages of life for larvae. So from egg to small larva to much larger and then capped brood. And so that's the job. Pull out frames and see if I can spot all that. So here's the first frame, and that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking to see if I can already see eggs and everything, and I think right out of the gate I saw everything I needed to know that this was a healthy hive. Now this is one of my splits, and it's taken a while for it to get started because the split has a new queen. The new queen then it has to go mate and then come back, and then it'll be almost a full month before the first eggs she lays hatch. And so this hive was pretty quiet in previous videos, and now for the first time it has foragers. They're up in the honey super, they're starting to get to work, so the population is happening. And when I'm looking at these frames I can actually tell a little bit, like the first round of eggs have hatched. There's a little girl saying hey. I will say the hives were pretty hot today. They were all over me. Next hive. Here's my canvas top end. What do you know? More ants have moved in. I'm giving up on these covers. They're just not worth it. Ants just have all decided that if they find this, that's their home now, and I don't want to deal with that every single week. More ants. The bane of my summer. So looking in the second hive, this one I actually gave it a new queen a little while ago. So this is my first time kind of looking in it since that's happened, and I'm not sure what I'm expecting to see, but here's the look into the brood chamber. Still plenty of bees, but the question is there a laying queen? And so I've got to do the same thing I always do, is pop through the frames and see if I can find one. Because the bees are pretty mad at me, you're going to see a bunch coming after the camera. They could tell that it's there, and you'll see that a little bit later on, I think. They're just all over the camera and all over me. This was not a day to try to avoid wearing gloves. And see how that solid top is capped brood. They'll emerge as worker bees soon enough. And you can see how active the bees are on the frame. This is actually one of the traits you can look for to see their temperament. The more sort of active and walking around they are, the sort of more defensive they tend to be, whereas if they just sort of hang out on the frame and they don't move, they tend to be more easygoing and less prone to sting. And these two for sure have very active bees, but it was weird why they were so defensive today. Maybe it's just because they've just been through so much with all the rain and the storms. They're just like, give us a break. So you can see here a whole lot of brood pattern being laid, mostly in a good pattern. But I think I just saw the queen on that frame. I didn't see her when I was actually active on it, but I think I just saw her there. So I'm looking for signs of eggs and everything, and I think I've seen it by now on this one, which means it's good. But this also means that this hive will start to now produce honey and get ready, which is good. It's only got 3.5 months at this point to get ready for winter, so it may not have a harvest of honey, but hopefully it'll have enough for itself. Now this is just a little bit of what it looks like when you smoke the top of a hive and you see them all scattered running down inside. I don't think I'd ever shown that before, but it's kind of neat to watch. You puff it and you're like, nothing's happening. You look back a second later and all the bees have run inside. There's a mostly empty box of honey that I'm hoping they fill up. And that one, if they fill up, will probably be theirs for the winter. And then if they fill that, you give them another one, and then those are the ones that typically are yours for a harvest. I don't know if they'll produce enough for a harvest this year, but see. Time to close it on up. I have to shake the bees back inside because they're all clumping. Scraping more ants away. And now for the cover. And there's some bees and stuff on that I just knocked loose. When I have to move fast, I have to kind of be a little rough, or I choose to be a little more rough with them. So normally I wouldn't smack that thing to knock the bees off. I would just shake it a few times, but had to move kind of quick. All right, next hive. This one you can see it's already got 3 boxes on it. The top one's pretty empty, but the bottom 2 are pretty full. So this one will have a honey harvest. So I'm going to show you what it looks like for me to open this. This used to have one of the cloth covers, but I don't now. So what I have to do is I lean down on it, put pressure, and then try to break the seal they put on it. And I do that so it doesn't make a big pop or sudden jarring motion, because that's a great way to agitate the hive right out of the gate. And you can see this is the mostly empty box that they were given a week and a half ago. And they haven't gotten anywhere with it yet, which is not surprising. The weather's been terrible, just rain and thunderstorms and stuff like that all day, and then of course a tornado. So they haven't had much opportunity to get out and fly and do their job. So I'm pulling 2 boxes off at once. Top box might weigh about 10 pounds with the wood and all the stuff. The bottom box weighs close to 50 pounds because it's pretty full of honey. So in the video it doesn't look so bad, but I was worried I was about to drop that when I was carrying it. You see all the wax on the top that they glued this thing together on. This is another honey box that I've got to pull off, and you can tell how mad the bees are now that I've gotten down to the bottom of it. So this is the brood chamber. And again, bees everywhere. You can see that one's a lot more full than the other one we just looked at. So same job as the other ones. Is there a laying queen? So this is one of the outermost ones, and you can see these are where the bees are starting to check out the camera a lot. But it's pretty obvious where the capped brood is on these because the black frames are really easy to tell. And you can see how slow these bees move compared to the others. They just sort of wander. These 2 hives have the same queen genetics, and so these 2 hives that I'm doing right now are the easiest for me to work because they're just way more relaxed. Just kind of meandering around, whereas the other ones looked really bothered when I was holding them up. And you can see around the edge all the pollen, and I think I'll show that a little more closely in a moment. But the outer frames were interesting in that they're not completely drawn out yet, but they're being used. Now when they fill out most of those, or they feel like they're full and can't use them, that makes them want to swarm. But it's late for that now, so now they're just living with it. I'm puffing smoke everywhere because the bees they're in my face, they're trying to get in, they're trying to sting me. You can see them hovering around the camera. They're all over that too. The bees are not happy with me today. And this is my nice hive, so something had them in a fit. One of the classic things to make them angry is if they don't have a queen. And so, since all the hives have been a little bit hot, I'm not sure if it's a queen problem or not, but look at this. This thing is solid. That is a queen that has been very busy. A productive queen would lay something like 800 to 2,000 eggs per day. And that's just a full frame of baby bees. And it's pretty neat. Usually you don't see them quite so full, like there's a band around it that they surround with food and stuff, but this one, she filled it out very completely. And you can see at the bottom like that almost half full, kind of waxy looking stuff in the honeycomb, that's pollen. Which last month, the bees had a ton of pollen in their frames, and it's since stopped. One of the reasons it may have stopped is all the rain has knocked all the pollen off, and then they can't get it, and that's their primary source of like pollen and of protein and fats. It's not nectar and honey. There's another bee visiting me. lots of bees land on my gloves because you can see how filthy they are, and they're filthy with honey and pollen and propolis and all the things they make. So bees are generally like very curious about my gloves, and obviously when I make them mad, they're very happy to sting them too. But they land on my gloves quite a bit. Now it's time to hoof this thing back on top. Now, it always frustrates me that this happens, but all the edges of the box get covered in wax and propolis, which means they're sticky. And so even though I'm setting this on like the lip of another box, it attached itself to the point that I had to break the seal again before I could lift this up, or it would have lifted the lid with it and then dropped the lid and then made a bunch of bees mad. So it's like bad enough you have to pick up this awkward 50, 60 pound set of boxes, but then you have to unstick them from each other at the same time. It gets me every time. Last hive. This hive is interesting in that it had a lot of queen supersedure cells, and I actually used those to replace the queen in the second hive that we looked at. I don't know why they made so many. I don't know if they actually did have a queen supersedure. I assume they did. But it's time for me to see how this one is doing. This one had me concerned last time I looked at it because of all the supersedure cells and because it was much slower progressing than the one next to it, even though they have the same queen stock. So this one, for whatever reason, had a hard time. I think this was a split and the queen left but never returned, and so they had to make a new queen, and on it went. Like, they just had a hard time getting started. So I'm curious to see what's going on in here. Taking both honey boxes off. So that one has a full one and an empty one too, unlike the other one, it's 2 fulls and 1 empty. So let's take a look inside here. This is a queen excluder, and I'm pointing out drones. You can kind of tell they're drones because they're a bit bigger than the other ones, and their eyes look like a big black helmet on their head and less like 2 eyes. So those are the drones, and they made a whole bunch of drones like last month, and now they're just kind of hanging out for the summer, and by winter they'll all be dead. So all the drones I'm pointing out here is just a lot of them. An abnormal amount of drones could be a bad sign. So that's a queen supersedure cell, and I'm taking it out. I don't have to, but that thing is only useful for raising queens. So I'm hoping that by taking it out, they'll rebuild normal wax there and then get on with it. And also I wanted to take it home and show my kids what a queen cell looks like. But yeah, I found a frame that had those in it that were sealed, which meant a queen was going to emerge in a few days, and popped it in the other hive, which I knew didn't have a queen, and here we go. It was ready to go again. So here's a frame that's only partially built out, and it's just full of pollen. You can see all that sort of solid color stuff in there. That's different. That's pollen. All the pollen right now is really orangey and red, as opposed to like a bright yellow. One of the cool things is you get to see all these different colors of pollen that you don't normally get to see or associate, as pollen could be that color. I've seen purples and blues and all kinds of neat colors. So this one, as I'm looking, is a little bit nerve-wracking for me because I'm going through frame by frame, and these frames are not very built out, and I'm not seeing evidence of a laying queen yet. And so I'm working my way towards the middle because that's the highest probable area that she will have laid. And so here we go. Now we see this fairly solid circular brood pattern, and I'm looking for, again, little eggs which are, I mean, like the width of a hair and just a few millimeters long. Like, they're impossibly hard to see. And then everything up from a tiny squiggle to a big chunky squiggle, and then the capped brood is what I'm looking for. And that tells me that a queen has been laying eggs throughout an entire time period. So what I'm going to point to here is look at all the pollen sitting around the edge. I talked a bit about how that's like the most important food source for them right now, but I'm wrapping up my inspection here. I've got evidence of the queen, so she's good. Ironically, this was a pretty hot day, high 80s, and I'm in full pants, the full suit, and smoke has been blowing in my face, and I was actually so hot, like my nose was starting to run, and I can't do anything about it because I have this mask on. it gets pretty gross in a bee suit. Another amazing brood pattern there, but check out that bee right in my face. It's like the theme of the day, bees being pretty unhappy with me. But that's what the suit was for, and that's what the gloves were for, just to keep me safe. All in all, this hive has been a bit of a mystery with all the supersedure cells it had, but it's doing well now. So I'm going to keep it healthy and see if it can produce any more honey. So with that, my inspection's done. I got bees checking out the camera and everywhere, and now I'm smoking it. Time to reassemble and call it a day.